Hello and welcome back to Automotive Logistics and Supply Chain Europe Live. I'm Rich Logan, Senior Content Producer here at Automotive Logistics and Ultimedia. Thank you so much for joining me. Sustainability lies at the very core of the automotive industry, and although the concept isn't new, it's never been as high on the priority list for car makers, suppliers and providers. Automotive companies have had to rethink their strategies, products and operations to create a sustainable future, and decarbonisation of the supply chain can play an important role in achieving that. Joining me today are three leaders and experts cutting through the greenwash and driving real transformation of industry, implementing real innovations and initiatives across their own companies, across their supply chains and the wider sector to ensure Europe continues to lead the way in sustainable production, supply chain and logistics. Before we bring on my first guest, we've launched a poll in the chat, which I'd encourage our audience to participate in. So we'll be looking at what will the most important factor in determining whether Europe's automotive sector achieves its sustainability goals or not. Is it A, sourcing strategies, B, transportation, C, standardization, or D, transparency? So just to run through those again, A, sourcing strategies, B, transportation, C, standardization, or D, transparency across the industry. So we're looking at what's going to be the determining factor in Europe achieving its goals. So while that runs in the background, I'd like to welcome my first guest, Jana Wignell, Vice President of Quality and Sustainability at Volvo Trucks, to the stage. Welcome, Jana.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Richard. And thank you for bringing these important topics on the agenda.
Absolutely, thanks. And we're delighted to have you and your expertise join us today. So, Jana, perhaps we can start with a little introduction to some of the roles and responsibilities as Vice President of Sustainability and Quality. What does that mean at Volvo Trucks?
Yeah, so my role is, as you say, on quality and sustainability of group truck operations, which is to make the really our manufacturing systems and our internal transportation sustainable. That's the main task. So that is in focus. And the topic that we'll be speaking about, of course, is really high on the agenda for us.
Absolutely. So you're the right person in the right place. So let's get straight into it. So let's kick things off by getting a sense of Volvo Trucks' sustainability roadmap. So where are you now and where will you be in 5 years, 10 years and beyond?
Right. So Richard, to say, I mean, where we are really in the middle of the climate transformation, really. So we have passed this, why should we do it? We have very firm what we should achieve. So we are now really in full focus on making it happen. And speaking about our ambitions, then we, as the rest of the societies and many companies, we acknowledge that we have basically 3 decades to go to drastically decrease the CO2 emissions. So that is on a societal level and high level our main ambition. Then for speaking more in concrete terms, we have a long-term ambition towards 2040, 100% fossil-free. So that is what we're aiming at. That means that 2030, we need to cut our emissions basically by half, so 50%, and then 2025, 30%. And this is the roadmap on a really high level that we share across the Volvo Group. So it's not only for our truck divisions, but for buses, for construction equipment, for Penta, and all our divisions. And of course, if to speak about this, then as vehicle manufacturer, I mean, we have product as a very important part of cutting the emissions. And we here I would like to make really a bold statement that we have solutions in place. Really, if you look at, I mean, looking at CO2 emissions, we have gas solutions. We have gas on trucks and gas in construction equipment. We have buses driven by gas for many years back. We have fully electric vehicles now as market-ready solutions. So we don't talk about the prototypes anymore, but this is really vehicles that are available to the customers, they are out in the market, and they have zero CO2 emissions. So we have big technologies in place for the product. Then missing piece is really the fuel cell for heavy construction and heavy duty vehicles, and that is where we have recently announced cooperation with Daimler on developing the fuel cell. So in a few years we will have on a product side then all the pieces in place. Then talking about our manufacturing system and our internal transportation, we are really focused on making it happen. We have places like our plant in Ghent that has been climate neutral for several years back. We have low emission plants like in Tuve and also on construction side in Braus. So we have learned what to do. We have some pieces in place, but then given the really high ambition and high pace, of course, there is much more to be done. And here we really are onto going into our manufacturing processes and add and also shift technologies towards more climate adjusted and climate friendly. Then also talking about the full supply chain, of course, we have ambition of becoming 100% fossil free, and we are taking steps, but this is the ambition that we share with the rest of the company across our supply chain. And I believe, again, on the planetary boundaries, this is something we need really to develop new innovative solutions, new cooperations, and also partnerships. So many technologies are in place, still a lot to be done here.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Well, a great snapshot there of the roadmap, where we are, where you are, where you want to be. But importantly there, talking about partnerships and collaboration, which we'll delve into. So that's a fantastic start and an overview. I know this is the European conference, but I'd like to get a sense of how your strategies differ globally, obviously with your responsibilities of a global nature. Can you tell us how you're implementing things in different regions, and how does Europe differ from the rest of the world for you?
So of course, I mean, in Europe, it is the same ambitions. We share. We are aiming at becoming 100% fossil free, and we have this cuts of the emission 2014-2030 in place. Then, having said that, of course, Europe is one of our very large markets. We have a lot of vehicles in Europe. We sell vehicles. We also have a lot of production facilities and warehousing. And given the speed needed, and we have also high political ambitions in Europe, which is really good because it really supports the climate transformation. Then of course it's high focus, and it is extra efforts we need to do in many places in Europe to get this done. But again, as I said, I mean, there are plants and there are places where we have succeeded, and the success factor was really partnerships. I mean, that goes without saying that this was what made it possible, and that is what we have learned as well.
Yeah, great, fantastic. And I understand that Volvo Trucks is part of the Science Based Targets Initiative. For those in the audience who aren't maybe familiar with that, can you just share some insights as to what that initiative is and how it's a core part of your sustainability strategy?
So basically, as a company, I mean, we take on the scientific approach. We have acknowledged also the framework, and we commit to deliver according to the framework of Paris Climate Agreement, which is setting the boundaries of course, each industry on the emissions. So we have done work internally to translate what does the targets of the Paris Climate Agreement, or targets, I would say the boundaries, what does it mean for us, and what does it mean for our different divisions and for our different processes. And this is the roadmap that I described earlier towards 50% cut of the emission, 30%, that is based on this scientific approach and based on the deliveries towards the Paris Climate Agreement. I think the science-based targets are really great initiatives because, as we said, the CO2 emissions are not specific to one company. I mean, we really share it as different industries and different organizations across Europe and across the world. And it gives clarity really on how to set the targets and what, so that we are sure that it really delivers towards the 1.5 degrees maximum temperature that we are aiming at, or sorry, increase, not the degrees. That is the framework of the Paris Climate Treaty. So we are fine with that. We are on the way, and our roadmap is really based on the science-based targets framework.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Jana. And this is a positive side that we've been talking about. Can you flag out some of the key barriers that you see potentially stopping Europe achieve its sustainability goals, or Volvo achieving those goals?
Well, I wouldn't say that something will be stopping. That's really not the case. But there are some, of course, elements here that are needed. I would like to start, when we talked about the science-based, I would really like to start to talk about the climate data, because if taking on scientific approach, we need really good knowledge of climate data, CO2 data, and not only that are specific to our own company and our own, but across the life cycle and across the value chain. And this, of course, having said that, it's not so easy to get hold of it. So really, the data is one key factor to get in place for the full value chain, so we can really measure and deliver towards this. On technology side, I would like to say that I think many things are in place, many pieces. On a high level, we know what to do. Again, on the big tickets of the drivelines and the product technologies, and also for the manufacturing side, then of course, when we come to more details on how to do it and how to enter to bring the really more climate technologies into manufacturing processes, just as one example, how to bring more of the renewable energy, because that is what we heavily will be dependent on, everybody in the electrification and towards fossil free. Then for sure, I mean, for products there are chargers, the new infrastructure that is needed, it is not in place. So if we want to keep 2025 and 2030 for really cutting by 30%, by 50%, then you need infrastructure. We need renewable energy, both for the products, but also for the manufacturing system. So, and we are not a producer of renewable energy, obviously. So there needs to be both capacity, there needs to be new grid solutions, because you need renewable energy in the place where it is needed, not only the main roads and the highways. And also for the manufacturing processes, you need the effect that is needed for the process. So there is infrastructure, there is charging infrastructure, there is energy side. This is something that will make it possible, but it is not fully in place. So I think we really need to join forces here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so great to see some positive things in place, but still some work to do. Thank you so much, Jana. We'll bring you back slightly later on in the show. But for now, I want to say thank you very much, and bring on stage my next guest. So please welcome to the stage Sanjiv Takyar, Head of Innovation, Solutioning and Strategic Marketing at a global packaging company, CHEP. Welcome, Sanjiv.
Hi, thank you, Richard. Wonderful to be here on discuss a topic very close to my heart. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. And when we spoke all those months ago about you being involved, this is a session that you wanted. You highlighted. Why are you so passionate about that?
Well, I think what we actually do as a business really does center around sustainability. Packaging and the choice of packaging plays such a critical role in helping businesses achieve their sustainability goals. So specifically, reducing the amount of empty miles traveled through optimizing truck utilization, making sure you have the right size of packaging and the quantities to fill out your trucks or other types of transportation. And then, reducing the total amount of miles traveled. So again, by sharing assets and sharing solutions, preventing the amount of relocations required of empty packaging solutions, and also obviously reducing the amount of waste by reusing packaging and preventing the use of one-way packaging that goes to landfill.
Yeah, absolutely. And my next question was going to be, what are some of the key trends you're seeing? I think you've covered them there, but are there any more trends that you're seeing, specifically around sustainability when it comes to packaging?
Yes, I mean, look, if we look at three big areas of influence, really, we're not seeing, I guess, trends as such. I mean, in my humble opinion, packaging is still not high enough in the business priorities, but it is becoming increasingly important. Businesses are focusing on their packaging strategies, and this is really fundamentally around the transition to electric vehicles, which I know we discuss on many forums and the subject of many logistic discussions. But as we transition to EVs, the supply chain and associated infrastructure is having to adapt, and the importance of re-looking at your packaging strategy is becoming increasingly important. And secondly, packaging is playing a very important part in the new digital world, as it plays a vital role in carrying the actual tracker that provides the real-time supply chain visibility data. And also, it is, as I mentioned before, the choice of packaging does really help to deliver sustainability goals, recognizing that standardization and sharing and reusing packaging is the critical element.
Yeah, fantastic. And just for our audience, we'll also have a packaging think tank later on today, so we'll be getting stuck into exactly some of those trends that Sanjiv mentioned, but important to reference them now in this context too. You mentioned strategies there. I'm interested in about the flexibility of packaging strategies for companies. We've got ambitious targets and goals between now, 2025, 2030. Can you give some insight into the strategic life cycle of packaging, how these decisions are made? Is it critical that they have to make the right decisions now, or is there opportunities to update these strategies as we get closer to those timelines?
Yes, I mean, packaging strategies can be, somewhat flexible, but the issue there is the more you need to be flexible, the more cost is involved, because then you tend to build unnecessary cost into your strategy and into your supply chain. The next 10 years, as you mentioned, over the next 10 years, taking us towards 2030 and beyond, as we go through this huge revolution towards electric vehicles, we expect that OEMs and suppliers are going to be rethinking their packaging strategies much more frequently than they have needed to in the past. But we also see that as a positive way forward, because as we go through this transition, really looking at those strategies will start to test the status quo. And at the moment, there is a lot of waste, a lot of unnecessary cost in the supply chain. And I think we now really have that opportunity to build packaging strategies that will be more sustainable for the future and take out that waste out of the supply chain. And it's companies like ourselves, we can partner with businesses and help them during this transition change stage to provide them with the right packaging, which will then reduce the risk and make them more resilient, as well as ensuring sustainability as the heart of the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Jana mentioned, I think that partnership is key and that support. Maybe you can delve a little bit deeper into just how you are helping your customers make the correct decisions to achieve their sustainability goals when it comes to packaging. Are you able to share some insights?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm really glad you asked that question. So, we CHEP, sustainability is the heart of our business, and we fully realize the challenge that businesses face. And the real challenge here is, how can you actually really measure sustainability? And therefore, over the past 6 months, we've partnered with a company called RDC to develop what we call a lifecycle analysis tool. And actually, I'd like to just spend a few minutes just to share an overview of this exciting development. So I think I've sent some slides. If we could just show those, that'd be great. So if you go to the next slide, please. So when we look at measuring environmental cost, often when we look at waste, people can assign and businesses can assign the economic cost, but what is the actual environmental cost, and how do we actually measure that? Is a big challenge that the industry faces. So if you go to the next slide, please. We've developed this life cycle analysis tool, and this actually measures the environmental impact of different types of packaging and different types of supply chain solutions. So taking it all the way from the raw materials needed to produce the packaging through into production, utilizing that packaging, the transportation from the packaging provider to suppliers through to the OEMs, and then taking that all the way to the end of the journey into waste and end of life, and also potential reuse. So if we go to the next slide, please. And this tool, you can imagine, is very, very comprehensive. There is so much data required in order to understand and do a comprehensive assessment of what does that life cycle analysis look like in terms of what businesses are doing today and what are the options. And on this slide, you can just see some of the data inputs that are required. Of course, this can be a challenge in itself, but we're very interested in partnering with companies to help extrapolate this data to make this calculation. We go to the next slide, please. So the actual tool itself, this is what it looks like. So we've already preloaded different types of packaging, and we can relatively quickly input the data to look at what do different types of supply chain actually look like in terms of their environmental footprint. So as you see an example on the right-hand side there, we can compare one-way packaging to a share and reuse model as offered by CHEP to see what is the actual output. And clearly, when we're working with businesses, and we've actually already started to work with a couple of the major European OEMs on utilizing this tool, and we're already seeing some really, really key data coming out from this study. So at the end, the final slide, please. What we will actually deliver as part of this tool is a report that will give 5 key measurements in terms of CO2 output, in terms of packaging waste, in terms of wood consumption. We all utilize cardboard packaging or wooden pallets, and we also go into the use of water and overall energy consumption. So hopefully businesses are going to find this a really useful tool just to look at what is their measurement in terms of the sustainability today, and what do alternative supply chain solutions actually deliver in terms of environmental costs and environmental savings.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Sanjiv. And I'm sure the CHEP team are on hand to divulge more information about that exciting new tool. Great to see there's already uptake in the industry. It'll be fascinating to catch up with you in slightly down the line to get some of that key data that you're coming through, just to see how you're helping exactly. But yeah, thanks very much for showing that. That's great. Sanjiv, thanks for now. We'll cut to my next guest and bring Sanjiv back slightly later on. But I'd like to welcome to the stage Franz Goller. Franz is head of automotive industry team at international shipping and logistics provider DFDS. Welcome, Franz.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Great to have you here. And before we get stuck into that, I just want to remind our audience that please do feel free to ask questions. This is your opportunity to pick the brains of our experts and leaders. So please do get them in. We'll answer as many as we can. And those that we can't, we'll follow up with afterwards. So Franz, over to you on the shipping side of the industry. Can you give us a sense of DFDS's roadmap to sustainability? We had a look at Volvo trucks, but with such large investment for new vessels and lengthy manufacturing lead times and life cycles, how flexible can the ocean sector be when it comes to sustainability and accelerating its plans?
Yeah, it's a good question, Richard. And flexibility is not what we're known for in the shipping sector, of course. So I mean, this requires a lot of planning. We have a legacy when we enter into new technology, and we have to acknowledge that. We can quickly look at the slides. I mean, of that I provided to you. So we can quickly look into that. But basically, if you can get those slides up, we can see what we're planning. And we as DFDS, we are for first and foremost a shipping company in many ways. But we also provide trailer transportations. But 90% of what we do is connected to the vessels. So what we of course have to do, if you take the next slide at once, we are of course looking at our current vessel pool. We own some 40-50 vessels that we have to work with, and that's a short-term plan. And by 2030, taking that to the next step, so we have to work with what we actually have at hand to retrofit and work with that. And then our longer-term plan, becoming climate neutral by 2050, is the next objective then. And then we talk about next generation vessels. So flexibility is not a strong key. We have to work with planning. We have to take the battle of the technology and the battle of fuels to really set that plan straight quite soon in order to enable what we're showing right now on the slide.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm certainly sure it's not just ocean that feels the pressure. Feels like this is a race to meet these ambitious targets, but the necessary targets as well. Ocean is considered one of the most sustainable modes of transport in global logistics already. How challenging does this make it for you? Is there any low-hanging fruit when it comes to sustainable innovations and what you can do to make improvements?
Yeah, I mean, please next slide. But yes, we are looked at of being sustainable, but there is so much we can do, and there is so much technology and what do you say, fuels and so on that are linking this. Just see what we're doing as DFDS. As I mentioned, we have our current vessels. So we have already in 2021 33 installations approved by our management, which means that we will do some small steps ahead. We have the anti-fouling coating, which more or less gives our vessels a dolphin skin, and that has a great impact on friction and which then allows our vessels individually to reduce CO2. What is also very important to us on short term is these software systems where we look into the current, the wind. We can by that then see the vessel planning as more optimal, and that also reduces. So those two things are very important for us just in this year and the coming years. And we also look into, of course, propulsion and bulbs of making changes to that and becoming more efficient. So that's very much technology based, of course. So when we take that current plan and we see what we're going to do next step, we of course it's the battle of the technologies. Is the emission free fuels, is the emission free techniques on the new builds. So that is of course very important when we look at hydrogen and ammonia being two important fuels and technology to cope with that. We also, I think also when we discuss this internally, our terminals will become much more of a hub in our systems, going from a terminal being the provider of hydrogen and electricity to be able to charge our DFDS logistics fleet, but also competitors. Looking at the future and our competitors, of course, they're out there, but we can only compete to our customers with doing things in the best way, efficient, but we can't compete in when it comes to infrastructure of fuels, etc. Right? So I think that our terminals will become very important of keeping that possibility open.
Yeah, absolutely, and some fascinating insights to see what's coming down the line for DFDS and ocean as a whole. And clearly, with this drive for sustainability, ocean's going to continue being a favorable option in terms of sustainability for global logistics. Is this slightly at odds with the growing trend towards regionalization, localization of supply chains? Is this going to cause a challenge when it comes to achieving those sustainability goals?
It's a good question, of course. We are all in favor of regionalizing and localization of production, etc. And I think I don't think that the global trade will end that quickly. But of course, what we as DFDS offer to Europe is the local transport. We try to take trailers away from hitting the streets. I mean, I think that the toughest from if you look at our logistics and our trailer division, we want to avoid the roads basically, because every time you avoid the road, it's better both financially but also for environment. So that's the important message. I think you have to go either put it on sea or put it on rail at the end of the day, and that is what we're trying to do within DFDS, to open up the intermodality in a completely accelerating that in order to reach the sustainability target.
Absolutely, acceleration is key there. It's a race we're all up against. Franz, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to encourage the rest of the panel to come back together and keep the automotive logistics L's working hard in the background, and ask them to share the results of the poll that we asked. So we asked the audience what will be the most important factor in determining whether Europe's automotive sector achieves its sustainability goals or not. We asked you A, sourcing strategies, B, transportation, C, standardization, or D, transparency. So if we can just have a quick look, hopefully the slides will be coming up on the screen. But what do you expect? I'll go to you, Jana, first. What are you expecting to see as the favorable option there? So sourcing strategies, transportation, standardization, or transparency?
It's a hard pick, Richard. But of course, transportation, we know that it has a really huge effect to make that shift. So I would bet on transportation, coming from the transport industry then.
Okay, and Sanjiv, what are you voting for?
I'll definitely vote for standardization. I think standardization is a pretty generic term, but across everything we do in the supply chain, if we can standardize and learn how to share solutions, share transport, share packaging, I think that for me would be the key.
Okay, excellent. And Franz, to complete the set?
I'll go for the first option, the sourcing strategies. I think that's very important that we can meet our customers and do things differently that we've done before. when looking at sourcing today is often very short term, which is natural because that's driving a lot of the efficiencies. But if we're gonna do it, if we're gonna make the change and transition, we have to work much more long term, and that is I think sourcing strategies that is the facilitator.
So, well, I'm not quite sure what's happened there, but looking at the votes, looks like transportation and sourcing strategies pretty close at the top there. So let's not worry too much about that poll there, and let's get stuck into some questions on the panel. But who do I have to say congratulations to there? It was Jana, and I think you were the front runner there, so congratulations. The champagne's in the post. Right. Jana, perhaps sticking with you. I mean, looking at Franz's roadmap, I'm keen to understand how Volvo Trucks and other OEMs integrate its own roadmaps with and ambitions with that of its providers or potential providers. How might that influence timelines and goals? Can you explain a little bit how that process works?
Right. So as explained a bit earlier, I mean, the Science-Based Targets Initiative gives framework across the different businesses and across the different companies. Then of course we have a lot of dialogue with if we speak about the supply chain with our suppliers on their ambitions. We have a discussion on, because we, again, as said, we share the same ambition more or less. So I don't see any large differences in timing. Nevertheless, what we discuss is also how to make it happen, because as what Franz was showing, I mean, DFDS is one of our suppliers and customers, and the solutions that are needed, of course, we have a mutual dependency on making that happen. So I think it's really interesting question. We do not align it on the level of that we actually put into our solutions, into our roadmaps. But nevertheless, I think this is really interesting point and interesting discussion. I was so impressed, Franz, by this dolphin skin. By the way, I haven't heard about that.
Perhaps just a little bit of a delay there. But
yeah,
oh, there we are. We just lost you there for a second, Jana. But
okay, sorry. So I was just about to say that this kind of solutions that our supply chain and our suppliers comes with are, of course, important bits and pieces for us, as well as we develop solutions that our suppliers are using and putting into there. So we are making this happen together, so to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And Franz, perhaps I'll go to you, and but this can be answered obviously by anyone. But yeah, how does supply chain disruption impact sustainability? For instance, the recent Suez Canal blockage, would have resulted in either additional kilometers when rerouting ships, or a reliance on air freight or road. Potentially not as sustainable modes of transport. How do we factor this into our supply chains, into our ambitions and our metrics?
So it's a very good question, of course. It's quite hard to answer, but at the end of the day, the way the automotive supply chains are built today, they're very vulnerable, right? So that is, of course, how do we tackle vulnerability and the emergency logistics? The more vulnerable, the more emergency needs we are seeing at every day. So of course, and as long as our modes are not secured sustainable, we need to tackle that in that old-fashioned way until we have a new solution for it.
Absolutely. And Sanjiv, perhaps I'll go to you and ask you: do we have the right mindset? CHEP are clearly innovating with tools. We talked about collaboration. Is there the right mindset yet in the industry to truly deliver sustainable logistics and a sustainable automotive future, or do we still need to make a transition?
I think Yeah, look, I think mindsets are definitely changing, and we're definitely moving forward in the right direction, but definitely not quickly enough, I would say. And I think within individual businesses, I think they have their own, they have the right mindset. They want to achieve sustainability goals, and they have projects running. But what we need to do is really take this to the next level, which is how companies like CHEP and other companies can help collaborate with a number of different businesses to bring them together, because I think that's where we're going to really see the needle move in terms of achieving sustainability goals, and sort of moving away from that sort of silo thinking and being more of a collaborative nature, which is very challenging, because obviously the industry is enormous, and where do we start and how do we go about facilitating that? But we see sustainability as a really common topic, and it's great that businesses are thinking about it, on a regular basis, and there's a lot of attention to it. I think we just need to take it up to that next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And Franz, I saw you nodding there and talking about the collaboration. Anything to add?
But I think collaboration is the next level. We need to do things differently than we do today. I made some slides on collaboration because I think that's the most important thing, and I really appreciate Jana being in this call as well. And I mean, as CHEP as well. I mean, looking at it in this square we're in right now, in discussing with the people here, Volvo being one of our biggest customer from DFDS, we have just started to look into some really interesting things on vertical, you could say, collaboration. As Jana mentioned, we are a supplier and a customer. So we have our operation in Ghent. We want to make emission free. We want to take with Volvo trucks around 9,000-10,000 yearly transports to make them green, and that it starts with deep sea containers coming in on through Antwerp, for instance. We want to have a green barge put in place. We want to have a green operation at our port in Ghent when the barge arrives, and then handle them with BEV-driven equipment, and then put them on road in Ghent up to the Volvo factory in Ostacker, and on a green with the green truck pulling the containers up there. So there are what I see is a good opportunity, and we really have a good discussion with AB Volvo on this project, and it has a lot of possibilities and CO2 discussion just that we can grab for.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that, Franz. This is exactly the kind of partnerships and collaborations that are needed, really.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we're running very close on time, but there's a couple of audience questions I want to bring up just to make sure that they're included too. So just bear with me. So John Carmichael, a friend at Maersk, asks us, to what extent are supply chain network redesigns a part of reaching CO2 targets versus pushing suppliers to become carbon neutral? Jana, perhaps I'll pick on you there.
Yes. If I correctly understood the question, Richard, I mean, if to redesign the supply chain or not, of course, the ambitions we have for the supply chain as an OEM are the same ones that we have on ourselves. So for sure, going forward, we expect, and also we need to do this decarbonization throughout the supply chain. So having said that, we have our own ambition, but we want our supplier to join into that. And for the suppliers that will not have any kind of ambitions or any kind of steps, I do not believe, not even talking about the Volvo, but I really have a hard time to see, how you will compete in the continuation. So if it will mean to redesign, not maybe basically, given this fact, but we need to perform on the decarbonization for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jana. And then another friend of automotive logistics, Rodney Salmon, with a question a few minutes ago. What is the quickest and lowest cost efficiency that can be brought into supply chain now to reduce CO2 and energy costs? Who wants to tackle that one?
Sorry, Sanjiv, but I was about to say you were bringing up the packaging question, and I think this is really a good one because it goes across. It has been kind of on the radar. It has not been very focused, and I would say it's a bit of low hanging fruit in terms of it's not advanced technology, anything like that, and it has a climate effect which is quite immediate. So these kind of areas, I believe, can be done pretty quickly. If I put it in that way, it's not an easy question, but still. So more of those.
Yeah, totally agree, Jana. And I think that is low hanging fruit in terms of just removing, and it seems like an obvious one, but just removing the use of one-way packaging and going to reusable assets. And reusable packaging is, I would say, to some extent, low-hanging fruit. And of course, the tool that I mentioned earlier is going to help companies understand where that low-hanging fruit is, so that they can, see the different options and the impact of different options, and then of course, what does that look like from an implementation standpoint? Because clearly that change is always challenging.
Yeah, fantastic. And I just want to ask the panel one final question. I've been greedy and I've taken more of the time than I promised, but if we can picture this, you're at the Automotive Logistics and Supply Chain Europe Live conference in 2030. I'm approaching my 25th birthday, so I'm very excited about that. But I'm still here and excited to be working on the panel. It's a continuation of this discussion, but how far have we moved the dial? Is it a continuation, of this discussion, or are we talking about something completely different when it comes to sustainability? Perhaps I'll pick on you, Franz, to kick us off, just with your final thoughts and comments.
Yeah, thanks. No, I think we actually are somewhere else. We moved ahead. We just last week from DFDS, we made announcements where we will have our first fossil-free vessel in 2025. And then the way I see that is hydrogen-driven. Hydrogen, I think we'll have a lot of that in hand this decade, so to say, which being one of many enablers of green, so to say. So I think with that, and I also see that horizontal collaboration, and we mentioned vertical, but horizontal, but being first I've been working on both sides, both on the OEM side and supplier side. There is so much more that can actually be done if we dare open up our system, buying solutions in different ways, more together, collaborative. It's a different way that I think will open up as well. Thank you.
Thanks, thanks, Franz.
There are some slides coming up as well.
There you go. Just and these, of course, will be available, and you can connect with Franz, who's happy to share and go into those in more depth with you after this. That's it for time. I can't go any further. I'd love to. I think we could talk about sustainability all day. The automotive logistics team certainly will be throughout the rest of the conference. So I want to say thank you very much to my panel, and we look forward to the follow-up questions and connecting with you again. So thanks very much. For our audience, thanks for your participation and engagement. Take a short break. We'll be right back. Next up at 1:30 Central European time, I'll be talking to Ineos Automotive and Jeffco about supply chain innovations. So take a quick break, and we'll see you soon.